Hey everybody, this is So Many Sequels. I'm Josh.
I'm Andrew.
Garrett.
And I'm David.
Today on the show, we're starting a new series. We just wrapped up
Yeah.
Star Trek: The Next Generation, and now though we're jumping into the Marvel Cinematic Universe, where it all
Again.
began with Iron Man. This is our second trip into the MCU, correct?
A third.
What's our third? We did. That's right. We did the Avengers first, and then along the way we did Guardians of the Galaxy. And now we're doing Iron Man 1, 2, and 3. So that's exciting.
Yay!
Iron Man came out in 2008.
The one that started it all.
It kickstarted the MCU. It made Robert Downey Jr. a movie star again, and the biggest he ever got to be.
Yeah, arguably the bigger star than he
still
ever
killing
was.
it. Oh yeah, for sure.
Nobody remembers him from Ally McBeal. Not a soul.
I do.
No, and like the thing is, nowadays people think of him as an action star. They don't think about they sort of overlook him as a
Comedic star who was on Saturday Night Live.
Actor, yeah.
No one remembers him from Saturday Night Live.
I know. Nobody remembers that season.
And he's probably going to get typecast as like, he was Iron Man.
He was literally Doolittle after the
Yeah.
Iron Man. He ain't going to be
can't
typecast.
typecast Robert Downey
He's
Jr.
not going to be typecast. He did Doolittle. What's wrong?
He's too big. Anyway, so Iron Man came out in 2008. Robert Downey Jr., MCU. This 2008 is an interesting year in movies. If you really go back and look at some of the things that came out there, this one came out right before The Dark Knight did, which, like, at the time, Dark Knight really overshadowed Iron Man, which was, of course it did. But of course, Iron Man proved to have quite the impact on not just superhero movies, but the idea of the blockbuster in general has been kind of redefined by the MCU. So I'm sure we all saw Iron Man when it came out.
Yep.
Yes, indeed, he feed the needy.
Andrew did not.
I did not see it whenever it came out.
Oh, really?
Why? It didn't look good to you?
Well, I just
You go see a bunch of bullshit and you didn't go see Iron Man?
I did. Well, ladies and gentlemen, Garrett Powders has left the building.
Man, I just got back.
Why didn't you go see Iron Man? I need you to defend your actions from 12 years ago.
How long after it came out?
I was I was in school at the time, and there was.
So were we.
Yep,
But yeah,
managed to see it.
Next excuse. What else you got?
I was a
What
fresh
else you got?
graduate at this point.
Yeah, I was a high school senior. What you gonna do? What you gonna do?
Yep,
Well,
yep.
I to be honest with you, I really don't have a reason then. It just at the time it didn't really seem interesting to me, and then I thought,
It passed you by.
oh my god,
It just passed you by. That's okay.
It's not okay.
You
But
eventually see it.
yeah, when did you see it?
I saw
Was it
when
last
came
week?
out on video later that year.
You
Oh,
saw it when
okay.
it came out on video?
Yeah,
That's a very old sentence.
It is an old sentence. You didn't even hear all the hype and then go, maybe I should go check out Iron Man a month later or something?
No.
It's better than Die Hard, dude.
Oh, well, that's no question.
I mean, I'm looking at what came out that same weekend already, Andrew, and it wasn't like there was a bunch of other stuff to go see.
no.
Listen, say something.
You want me? I'll list some stuff that's in the bottom. Bottom.
Because I guarantee that this fool on this screen
Andrew
saw all of them.
random ass movie.
Did you go
Did not
see
Iron Man?
Did you go see the Forbidden Kingdom that weekend, Andrew?
No,
Did you go see Nim's Island?
no.
Did you go see Prom Night?
Oh, I saw Prom Night.
No.
You were at a theater at the time.
I was working at a theater. That's true.
Where did Andrew? You must have went and saw 21.
No,
21.
I think it
I
was.
think that's the one.
Speed Racer.
John Cusack. Is that right? There's the one where they're like counting cards.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember it.
They're like 6 MIT kids. It's like I don't know. What else might Andrew have seen on here? Horton Hears a Who?
That's a good
Drill
movie.
Bit Taylor.
Not a
He
good
was
movie.
that.
You saw
Andrew-
Drill Bit Taylor?
But
Andrew-
Iron Man didn't look good, huh? But Drill Bit Taylor sure did.
You went and saw Leatherheads, didn't you?
Your credibility is.
No, I didn't go
dropping
see
fast.
Leatherhead in theaters. But Drill Bit Taylor, it sucked.
But you watched Drill Bit Taylor in a movie theater?
That's to you, only person who's seen Drill Bit Taylor.
You know, movie theaters are dying right now, and you're out here
All right.
going to Drill Bit.
Moving on.
Well,
No,
all right,
I don't
yes.
think we can. I think the show has been redefined.
I saw this, I think, twice
Josh,
in
listen, you started this meeting. Can you just mute his mic?
I think
can.
I saw this.
Please do.
I think I saw this like twice in less than 3 days when it came out. It was super cool. Yeah, Andrew's muted now.
Yeah, I muted him.
Jesus.
I'll bring him back in a minute.
No.
You know
I brought
what? What a
myself
good
up.
idea. Oh, wait, what the heck? I don't have full control.
You can mute him for a
Whenever
second.
someone talks too much, I'm just going to mute him.
Kick him out of the meeting.
Okay, but for real though. David, you were talking about you saw it multiple times.
Yep.
Yeah,
I saw it multiple times. I'm sure Garrett saw it multiple times.
probably. I don't remember the specifics.
Andrew
but
didn't see it until it came out on home video.
I remember I was in high school, and one of the coolest high school teachers I ever had was a big Iron Man fan. And I remember all of this hype because superhero movies, obviously. But I feel like, and maybe I'm wrong, I know that Iron Man is like a character that people know, but I feel like he's not mainstream. In 2008, Iron Man is not mainstream for Marvel.
No.
He
So
was
for them-
not.
For them to jumpstart everything with Iron Man, I feel like was bold strokes. It was like, we're going to give you a character that you may have heard of, but don't really know anything about. We're going to test Robert Downey, who is sketchy at that point in time.
Mhm.
And they just knocked it out of the park.
Well, I mean, that was the crux that I think they had to deal with was all of Marvel's best known characters. They did not have the rights to make a movie about, so they were kind of forced into this. And keep in mind, this is also pre-Disney, so they're working with like Paramount and other companies to throw this together. I think people forget that like this did not start with Disney.
Yeah.
in control. They started it out on their own.
No, essentially, it's
Much more ragtag group.
as unlikely as this sounds today. This is essentially an indie movie because Marvel Studios was just like Marvel Comics decided to launch their own studio, and Marvel Entertainment decided to launch their own film studio. And with the rights that they still had, this movie had a good sized budget, but it's because they were able to go to people and pitch the movie on what they were able to get, which is things like, hey, we've got Jon Favreau interested in directing. Jon Favreau was really big from directing Elf, as well as a few other movies before that time. And they were able to kind of get interest in the movie, and enough so that they could pay Robert Downey Jr., who didn't make as much here as he would end up making later, get Gwyneth Paltrow, Jeff Bridges, got people you wouldn't really normally ever see in a superhero movie.
Yeah.
And really were able to make a real statement on a comparatively smaller budget than today's standards with a lesser known character that people weren't really expecting.
You know what they did well, though? Because what we have to go on for Marvel properties at this point in time, essentially, is a bad Hulk movie.
Yeah.
You have bad Fantastic Four, two times over, I think. And then you have all of the DC movies, which have all been very good for the most part, but very dark. And they came out, and I was thinking about this watching this movie. To this day, this movie is still cool. Like, it may not have the greatest of everything, but this movie, 10 years later plus, is still really cool. Tony Stark, very cool. The way they handled the science and the graphics and the building of the Iron Man suit is very cool. Kicking things off with the cool riff that everybody recognizes of Back in Black and AC/DC. That's cool. Tony Stark himself is so different than any other superhero character that you've ever seen. He's so nonchalant. He's basically, if Bruce Wayne were cool, like if he fell into the cool camp.
Yeah. Well, he's
and,
if Bruce
you'd
Wayne
never had anything like that before.
He's if Bruce Wayne the character that Batman sort of puts on was a real guy. You know, like he's this super playboy who makes a lot of money. I mean, comparatively, like today's real world people hardly even really compare to the level of sort of character that this guy has. Like he's unlike anything that you've ever seen in a superhero movie before. He's not Peter Parker. He's not like Bruce Banner or Clark Kent or Bruce Wayne or any of those characters that we've really seen before, because he's just kind of a cool guy. And then you take that and you have a cool, you put him in a story, where he is confronted by demons that he didn't really even know were there, and it makes for a really cool narrative. And the way that they orchestrate the plot makes you really engage with the character of Tony Stark more so than the coolness of Iron Man.
Yeah.
Because we don't even really get like in the suit flying Iron Man until an hour into the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Like we have that rudimentary basic suit that he builds, in like around the 35-minute mark. But then there's no more Iron Man suit until about an hour and 4 into the movie. And then you're flying as Iron Man. And then the red and gold suit doesn't even show up until about 15 minutes after that. So they don't it's not quite like most superhero movies where they just rush right into, I'm a superhero now doing superhero things. Here's a bunch of fighting and action. It's really a very character-based story. And I think that it's really made this character stand out because it's not just Iron Man that people think about. It's Tony Stark. They care about the person under the suit.
Well, and that's what they need to do. And they origin stories are hard, in my opinion. They're, that first movie sets up a lot, and it sometimes doesn't go right. But I think what they need to do a lot of times is look at this movie and implement that into origin stories. Don't make me care about the superhero. Give me the superhero at the end or near the end. Give me something at the end that make me care about the character. And then you can hook me, because that's what they did. I mean, again, if you see a Tony Stark-like character, the odds of you liking him are very small. He's very selfish. He's very self-centered. He's an asshole to start off this movie. But then you pepper in, and I use that on purpose because you see it that he legitimately cares about Pepper, even though he's a playboy. Mm-hmm. You see that he's scared building this suit after he's been captured. He's really cool with the soldiers, and then all of a sudden everything goes crazy, and he has this moment of like, oh my God. And he sees that it's his weapon that is killing these soldiers, and that sets something off in him that he didn't know was there. And then he continues to build his whole interaction with Jensen as they're building that very first Iron Man suit, and he cares for this man and he wants to save him. And when Jensen goes and sacrifices himself for Tony, that sets something else off. When he gets back, he sits down at the podium and he's like, we're not doing weapons anymore. And I had a moment, because I'd never really put them together because I've never seen them back to back like that. But that moment where he realized he wanted to change is very similar to what he did in Civil War. Whenever he realized, okay, we're helping people, but my actions are putting innocent people at harm. And I can't have that. And it just goes to show that in 2008, they had that moment. And then in Civil War, they had that moment. And they continued to keep Tony, and they do that with all their characters. But this is the really first time that I had gone back to watch Iron Man after having this whole phase of Marvel and seeing what they did and keeping those character elements. And so when I saw him do that, immediately I thought of Civil War, and that's how Civil War started. So they didn't even know what they were doing at that point in time, but so many things continued through 12 years of storytelling.
Right. I actually had that discussion with my wife because she pointed out that he actually says the line in Iron Man when he comes back from this experience. I saw that I became comfortable with a system of zero accountability. He actually says that line, and that's basically the whole crux of what Civil War would end up being about, is that Tony, he pushes away from what system he viewed was bad in his life, and he took responsibility for his stuff, right? And then
Right.
over time, he sort of unwittingly or maybe unknowingly created a whole new system of zero accountability for himself. And when he realizes that, when he's confronted with that in Civil War, it's, of course, he's going to make the same decision. I realized I've become a part of a system that doesn't hold myself and others accountable. I'm going to change that. So like like they didn't know it at the time when they were making Iron Man 1, but
Right.
if you really go back, you can find these moments that really kind of steer towards those the big things that we would get later. What about you, Josh? Is there anything particular you remember about your first memories?
My first memories?
Or even new memories you made this time?
Honestly, no. No, nothing really stood out to me this time that I hadn't noticed in the past. It's still just a really solid, like, kind of introduction to a character. It's a good origin story. It's different than what we've been used to, because before this, we pretty much just saw the origin stories of like Batman, Superman, and Spider-Man kind of repeated over and over again, and getting a different character is very nice. Very nice to see a new type of origin story that we weren't used to.
Mm-hmm.
A new type of character that we weren't really used to. You compared Tony to Bruce Wayne, and the similarity is definitely there. They're both rich men who can like basically pay their way to being a superhero, but they both approach it in such drastically different ways.
Mm-hmm.
And for different enough reasons. I mean, you got Bruce Wayne is Batman to kind of, seek vengeance for his parents.
Mm-hmm.
And Tony becomes Iron Man not to kind of seek a personal vengeance per se, but that idea of kind of righting his own wrongs
mm-hmm.
through, his production and selling of like weapons of mass destruction to foreign governments and the government and all that good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a kind of a more complex story that I really appreciate. That aspect of it.
A new take on a similar theme.
Yeah, and it is like he does so much cooler things with the money and the technology than you get from Batman per se. So that's also fun. The Iron Man suit is amazing. Seeing him, I really love seeing him go through the process of building it and trying to get it right. The first suit he builds is out of like necessity. He's trying to escape captivity. And so it's this really rough, almost scary looking thing, massive. And then he gets to refine it. And I still love the part in his garage where he's like flying all over the place with the jetpacks on his hands and feet.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny. It's funny stuff.
Yeah.
The only real downside to this movie that I think there is, and it's really just a downside for the MCU, is that the villain is very weak.
Yeah, I feel like the performance by Jeff Bridges is fine.
Yeah,
but there's no real shock when it turns out. I think even back when I watched it the first time, there's no real shock that he's the bad guy.
Well, and what's great to me, or what works about it, is that this movie benefits from being an origin story in that your focus is not the villain. It doesn't really matter who the villain is. The villain just needs to be competent. And he is. It's just not very exciting. Now, the good thing is most of the excitement comes from becoming Iron Man in this movie. It's down the line when that starts to really hurt it in different ways that we'll talk about in the future. But
yeah,
it would have been nice to have gotten, I don't know. It's just the guy who takes over the company while Tony's gone, like it becomes a bad guy.
Well, and it's lame.
It's lame.
It's unfortunately not a really very good like final fight they necessarily have either. Like,
Right.
it's not necessarily like, we talked about, they take all this time building Tony Stark, and we were working your way up to Iron Man. You have big clunky suit, then you have suit with no colors, then you have color suit, and you're finally getting to like let's really cap it off here and have like a really exciting robot suit fight, but it's just kind of the fight's kind of clunky, which makes sense when you consider like these two guys have never fought in iron suits before, so why would they be good fighters? But
yeah,
it doesn't necessarily feel like a very rewarding climactic fight, which I think is what you really want in a good superhero movie. Is you want cool comic book fighting, unrealistic crazy fights.
Right.
So that's the payoff there isn't great, but fortunately the rest of the movie does such a good job that it's kind of hard to let that hamper it too much.
Yeah, and the real payoff doesn't even come from the like climax with the villain, because that's honestly forgettable once you get to the real end, and it ends on this cliffhanger moment of Tony doing what we've previously always been told is the one thing that a superhero can never do, which is just admit it.
Yeah.
He's got all the press there with him at Stark Industries, and it's like, I am Iron Man. And then the credits roll, and it's like, what? They never do that. What if Batman did that? That would be crazy.
Yeah. Crazy. What if
so
Spider-Man did that?
You don't even remember, you don't even care about the villain anymore. It was just a piece of the story to get you there. It's a movie that's really completely about Iron Man.
Right.
And it doesn't matter who he's fighting.
No, that's true. No, it's a very cool ending.
It is a cool ending.
That I remember when the credits went, I was just like, oh, that was awesome. It ends there, man. Because Spider-Man, we've had like by this point 3 Spider-Man movies where he's like no one can know my secret identity.
Yeah.
We've had Batman movies forever. Batman hiding his face when people, almost see him without his mask.
We literally had Batman Forever.
Yeah.
Right.
And so like it's a very refreshing concept, and in general they've kind of kept that up in the MCU. There's not really very many secret identities in the MCU movies.
No, it's really just, and that's very recently the lid's been taken off that, but Spider-Man was the only real secret identity in the MCU. Everyone knew Steve Rogers was Cap. Everyone knows about Bruce Banner. Like, everyone knows about these people.
Mm-hmm. Andrew, say words. Speak
now.
So, when it comes to action films, it's very rare that I hold action films a little bit to a high degree, because not only they have to be at a certain value to where it's not boring, because action films can be boring in that, if there's no substance, there's really nothing going on here. And I feel like if you're going to make an effective movie straight out the gate, you're going to need to do something that's pretty off the wall. It was mentioned earlier that it was a big gamble casting everybody in this movie, really, especially Robert Downey Jr. I think Robert Downey Jr. could not have been a better choice, because the way I look at it, Iron Man is a little bit like personal redemption. And you could even say that Robert Downey Jr., this was like a personal redemption for him in terms of his career, because we see Tony Stark as, this arrogant person who's really doesn't care about anything except selling weapons and making money, when really he sees the bad things that he's been doing and tries to redeem himself through making a good, try to right his wrongs, even though he's probably going to spend his whole life doing it. If you look at like Robert Downey Jr., if you study his history, he's had a bad history. He's treated himself horribly, and this is like his one shot to actually do it, to actually get out of the rut that he's in, and he does it extremely well. He does it incredibly well.
One could say he did not throw away his shot.
I was muted. I said shut up.
But
Josh was muted, so he was helpless.
Oh, burn!
You muted.
Oh. Satisfied.
Okay, you can come.
But anyway,
Oh boy.
no, like this movie is incredibly solid because you have the elements of comedy, but more importantly, you have the elements of structure.
Mhm.
The structure in this, the formula they're using, is absolutely great. It's incredibly entertaining even today, and it has held up very, very well even since 2008. And
Yeah, the graphics don't look silly.
no,
I
they
mean,
don't.
you run into a whole kit and caboodle of possible just doesn't hold up. But I mean, everything they do with that suit, even the montages of him making it, the close-ups of it being ironed or like screwed into him, it all looks great. Still,
Yeah. Well, we're kind of lucky in that regard that the late 2000s, the technology really got there, and we're not far enough away from it yet, I think, to know the difference.
Yeah.
Who knows? In 10 years, it might look like crap.
That's true.
I don't know what it'll look like. If Avatar 5 comes out and it's like 3D with my own eyes and not glasses, and like also it's actually 4D and you're in
everything.
Then I might go, Iron Man kind of sucks.
Everything looks totally normal.
Yeah.
But like it makes the argument that Iron Man is that much better of a movie, and it really sets the stage for what good is going to come of this. And MCU really kind of knew what they were doing whenever they launched it.
Mm-hmm.
I think the choice of director of Jon Favreau was genius.
Favreau.
Favreau. Whatever. Jon Favreau. I think
Favreau. What are you?
You muted.
You muted. No, you're not.
No, I agree with you. He was hot off a couple other movies at this time, and this one really, I think, put him on the map as being a pretty reliable guy to go for.
Well, wasn't a lot of this, and maybe I'm wrong, but like, wasn't a lot of this movie just kind of improv? My understanding is that they didn't really have a lot of script to go with. So Favreau
I don't think they had a lot
and Downey Jr. were just kind of like, here's the thing, let's try this. And so a lot of it was just them and their talent as a director and as an actor, because a lot of it, from what I've seen, a lot of like BuzzFeed articles that I've read, so take it for what it's worth, talk about how Robert Downey Jr., some of the best moments come whenever he's just going off the top of his head. They talked about Spider-Man, and I guess there was a scene between he and Tom Holland where Holland forgot his blocking and didn't stand up and move. And so he just goes, or Robert Downey Jr. just goes, this is where I sit down now. But it worked because Peter Parker, is so stunned by Tony Stark, and that was the thing that Tony Stark would do. And it just made sense. And I feel like this movie was also kind of a lot of them just like, let's just try this and see what happens.
Yeah, I think they had a story structure. They had scene templates sort of ironed out of like what needs to happen in each scene. But as far as dialogue was concerned, like they just kind of got in there, and Favreau and Downey and Paltrow and Bridges and Terrence Howard, whoever they had needed in the scene, they would just kind of like improv and spitball, and they would, they'd probably, come up with something. Oh, that sounds really good. Let's definitely say that. And then, we can kind of find our way out of the scene, as naturally as we can. And these people all have such great chemistry. You'd think they'd been working together for like 40 years, but this was like, for a lot of them, their first times really working together this closely anyway.
But also, you have to understand that both Robert Downey Jr. and Jon Favreau have comedy roots. Like, I mean, that's kind of what they are. I mean, they're comedy roots, and to find them in an action film, you really don't know what you're gonna expect. And that's why I think it's genius on his part to like include Robert Downey, and it was totally unexpected and surprisingly quite good.
Yeah, and the tone of this movie really became the tone of all the movies that Marvel would make going forward, in that there's action, there's some serious moments, but there's a lot of humor, and there's a good amount of lightheartedness. There's elements of slapstick and genuine jokes, littered through these movies, and I think it's part of what has made them feel so much more approachable is the sort of, I don't know, the fact that all the characters have a certain charm.
You know, there's a book that exists in this world that I highly recommend for anybody who is a fan of comic book, anything, whether you're an actual fan of comic books or the movies or whatever. It's called Slugfest. And essentially it looks at the history of DC and Marvel over the course of the years. Obviously, DC's been around forever. So everybody's very familiar with Superman and Batman and Wonder Woman and all of those heroes. They've been around forever. And Marvel came around several years after that. It was like the 60s or the 70s, I think. And the difference is, and you can see it in the movies, you can see it in the comic books, the difference, that one of the main differences is how relatable the heroes and characters are in the Marvel universe, not just in the movies, but in the world of each company. Mm-hmm. The problem that you run into, in my opinion, with Batman and Superman and Wonder Woman, Batman's a little more relatable because he went through some stuff, but like all of those characters are seen as perfect gods. Like people look up to them and they're the epitome of good and they have no bad flaws about them that they portray. Whereas Marvel is like, nah, they're just regular people. Let's put their flaws out there. Let's put all of this stuff out there and make them real people and not these perfect embodiments of what we should be that people look up to and worship. And that's what you run into a lot of times with those DC movies. They have done a lot better in this initiation, at least with Wonder Woman. Superman did not land that well. And Shazam. They're doing a better job of making their characters more relatable. But for so long, whether it's in comic book or whether it was movies, they're just so squeaky clean. And that's not reality. And I think that's where they struggled. So.
Yeah, I mean, Iron Man as a character started off as sort of like a dare, you know, a bet. I don't really remember the exact the exact, you know, the people involved. But I know Stan Lee was challenged to make a superhero, make a character people would like that was like a weapons industrialist. Like that was like more or less the point. Because like when it was written during the 70s, you have the Vietnam War going on. Vietnam War, very controversial back then. And the idea of making a superhero out of somebody who essentially was a war profiteer is like, that'll never work. And so Stan was like, well, we'll try it, you know? And so they came up with this whole premise, and he becomes becoming one of the more popular characters they have of the 70s. And it's because of his struggles with his own, you know, perception in the world, and his struggles with his his addiction and things like that, that people really kind of latched on to the character, because Marvel's characters at the time were a little bit more adult and a little bit more flawed and relatable. I mean, down to the point of you know, Spider-Man and Hulk were like, I think named like two characters. Like there was like some kind of study at Harvard, and they named Spider-Man and the Incredible Hulk as characters that were pop icons to them. And I was like up there with like Michael Jackson and like someone else, I can't remember, but like these fictional characters. And you've had bouts of that with the DC characters trying to get that same thing, but because those characters were such pillars of morality for so long, the idea of making them flawed has been met with a lot of pushback of like, if you change what was special about those characters to try to make them more relatable, then they're not really the characters they were anymore. And so it's very difficult. You kind of have to find a good line of making the character relatable while not sort of undoing what makes them special.
I think the difference for me in these types of movies between Marvel and DC, and we've gone on to a different type of conversation, but it's a good conversation in my opinion, is that we know how these movies are going to end. The bad guy is going to triumph, or the good guy is going to triumph. That's just the way these movies go. You're going to have a struggle. You're going to have a fight. The good guys are going to win at the end. The end. That's it. The difference is, when I watch them, the believability that the Marvel people could lose is higher because of the fact that they are more relatable. Whereas Superman, I mostly focus on Superman. Batman is, again, more relatable because of the fact that he is just a regular guy. But like Superman and Wonder Woman are gods, like legitimately. They're legitimate gods. And well, I mean, Superman's an alien, but I mean, in the world, whatever, you know what I'm saying. It's not believable to me that, yeah, they won. Okay, that's expected. But there is a chance that the Marvel people could lose because they are not all powerful. They're just dudes most of the time.
Their enemies resemble Superman more than they do.
Mm-hmm. So that's the difference that I have when I watch those movies. Is just, as much as I enjoy them both, I skew towards Marvel because of the fact that there is so much real life and relatability that I can grasp onto that is still missing from some of these DC movies.
So you would say that like MCU is more human?
Human.
Like human based?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I mean, if you think, I mean, even Guardians of the Galaxy, those are mostly aliens, but they still treat them like humans. They don't treat them like aliens. Even you feel sympathy for a talking raccoon. I mean,
sure.
when Superman died, I felt nothing.
Yeah.
Well, am I supposed to be sad right now? Okay, I'm not. He didn't have much of a personality of which to connect to.
And I still claim that has more to do with the creators involved with those particular films and film franchises than it does the actual character itself. I think that almost any character can be brought to those points. They just got to find a real good way to breathe new life into some of these older characters.
Right, and that is also a problem that DC tends to run into, is because those characters are so old. I get what you're saying about, you don't want to change them because that's the way they've always been. But you know what? Times have changed. Change them. You can keep the essence of them, but like put them in different scenarios. Change it up a little bit.
You have to find that way to adapt.
Yeah.
I have one really interesting thing that I wanted to talk about. Unless anybody has anything else.
The only thing I was going to say real quick, just to kind of point it out there, I thought it was interesting how they used AC/DC songs throughout the entire movie.
Yeah.
For a movie called Iron Man, which is a song by Black Sabbath.
Yeah, they save that for the credits.
They do save that for the credits.
You can't blow your load right out the gate like that.
No, but the use of AC/DC songs was really good. It was a really nice touch.
It was a lot of fun. The movie comes out with a ton of energy. You know, when Back in Black slaps in, and you're like, you're watching a armed caravan tear through the desert, and then all of a sudden, like you're in a firefight. It's an extreme amount of, you're like, whoa, this is hitting right out of the gate. I didn't expect this. It's pretty cool.
Stop, look, and watch.
So Andrew, you mentioned the idea of this movie, the theme of this movie being sort of about self-redemption, right? Or redemption. Yes. And I think, so I have thought about, or tried to on several occasions, write like a full thesis paper about this theme that they crafted with the Marvel movies. And they give you a foreshadow, a template for this right at the beginning of this movie. And it kind of goes overviewed by, most people overlook it. But at the beginning of the movie, the reporter, Christine Everhart, she comes up to Tony Stark and she asks him all these questions about if he loses sleep, about, what he's, his line of work, being a weapons manufacturer. And she says, how do you respond to your other nickname, the Merchant of Death? Now, the Merchant of Death is not necessarily a new nickname. Here's a story going back to 1888. In 1888, Ludwig Nobel passed away, and several French newspapers wrote, "The Merchant of Death is dead." Now, these French newspapers had the story wrong because Ludwig Nobel was not the Merchant of Death. His brother, Alfred Nobel, was known as the Merchant of Death. Alfred Nobel, who you may know for the Nobel Peace Prize, invented dynamite, which, while good for mining, also became a very common tool. It and things that they could make using it, and very popular tools for warfare. So Alfred Nobel created what was at the time a very common weapon of war, and there were some in the French press referred to him as the Merchant of Death. When Alfred Nobel saw these headlines that had mistakenly attributed him being dead, and he saw that his legacy was the Merchant of Death, it apparently appalled him so much that he decided to dedicate all of the money he had to go into a fund to create the Nobel Peace Prize, to encourage peace and to encourage discovery and exploration, so that his legacy would forever be changed. And nowadays, I think most people, when you hear Nobel, you think of the Nobel Peace Prize. You don't think of the guy who created dynamite. That right there is your template for everything Tony Stark will ever do in these movies. Tony Stark is confronted with seeing his name plastered all over these bombs and weapons in the hands of the people that he thinks they're designed to stop. And he realizes that his name and his legacy, as Jensen tells him, is basically dirt. He is forever going to be known as this monster killer that helped all this. And so his course of action is to change that legacy so that Tony Stark and Stark Industries is not known as a weapon manufacturer, but as like a forward-moving progressive technology company that basically is a world saver and not a world destroyer. And I think that's just such a fascinating idea to kind of tie Tony Stark historically to Alfred Nobel, because even when we'll get into it next week in Iron Man 2, what does he do? He creates the Stark Expo, which is a thing to foster ideas and technology and new ways of doing things. And I just think that's such a cool little thing that's really buried in the movie that I don't even know if honestly that was what they intended to be the case. But just bringing up the Merchant of Death, I was like, I know that story. What exactly is that? It's such a fascinating idea, and legacy really is the central theme of this entire franchise with Iron Man. Iron Man 2 and 3 both look at elements of that. And really, you could make an argument that Tony's entire through line through the MCU is about Tony fixing his legacy.
Very good.
Wow.
I did get mind blown.
That was a whole thesis on Alfred Nobel right there.
I know.
Wow,
that was as I've tried to. I've written that like 3 times. Like I've written up like a whole paper on it, and I'm like, I don't know where I'm going to put this.
Well,
I'm
glad you
I'm
found
glad
it.
like 3 likes.
The internet will like it.
Podcast with a small audience is the perfect place.
Yeah.
I know, right? I thought I'll put it on
paper.
Reddit and I'll get like 4 upvotes.
Yeah. I don't even know what to add to that. I mean, yeah.
No, that's pretty deep.
I like it when things go boom.
Like my mind is right now. Boom.
Oh boy.
I like the red and the gold colors on Iron Man.
Anybody for what?
Just ignore him.
I was gonna say we should talk about the fact that Paul Bettany got basically saved his career thanks to an hour of voiceover work for this movie.
True. Well, and on the flip side, Terrence Howard lost his chance to be a superhero.
I know.
And really a career. Like,
Kinda
I know that he's done a few things, but like, who thinks about Terrence Howard? Nobody.
Really
What?
awkward.
So Terrence Howard, was he just? Did they just let him go, or?
Oh, there's a whole thing about it. You don't know the whole thing about it
We'll
yet?
get into
It's
that with Iron
allegedly.
Man 2.
I know a little bit about it, but
Brief synopsis is he alleges that Robert Downey Jr. hung him out to dry. He wanted more money, and Terrence Howard was like, "Come on, RDGA, what's up? Hook me up." And he was like, "Nah." That's the Terrence Howard version.
Yeah, supposedly Marvel wouldn't pay him more, and he asked for more, and he thought that Robert would be with him on that, and may not have been the case.
Very soon, Edward Norton would learn that lesson.
Yeah, well, I
You
don't know
want
if
more
we'll ever
money?
end up really,
No.
I don't know if we'll ever end up really covering the Incredible Hulk, since it didn't really ever have a true sequel, nor was it a
Probably not.
sequel itself.
Probably not.
But
Maybe
it came
just to
out.
round
It
out
came
the
out just.
Marvel universe one day.
It came out just months after this movie.
1 month. It came out in June. Iron Man came out in May.
Wow.
I remember seeing the Incredible Hulk all by myself with a room full of fathers and their 6-year-olds.
I also saw the movie all by myself.
I don't believe I saw it in theaters.
Lame.
I didn't see that one in theaters.
Andrew
That's okay.
probably
I didn't
never
see
watched
Thor in
it.
theaters.
Anyway.
Yeah.
I got nothing else.
Okay.
I like the movie.
Anybody got like a favorite part or anything you want to like touch on before we move to a new?
I still like when he blows up that big old tank with that tiny missile and just walks away like a boss.
Yeah, it's pretty. That's a pretty hard scene. I kind of like
that
when,
and seeking missiles that kill all the bad guys and not the civilians. I like that too.
I kind of like it's right around that same part where he pulls that guy out of the wall, he throws him down.
Yeah.
He takes off and I remember because this is like the first time you really ever get to hear it. He talks while inside the suit and it's all like synthesized and electronic. And I thought it was the Toonami guy. He's like, "He's all yours," and I was like, "Oh man, Iron Man robot voice. This is so cool."
That's funny.
Cool.
I would have to say when Tony like busted out of his chamber.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever he first designed the suit, because that design of the suit was actually the first design of Iron Man, and I like how they paid homage to it.
Mm-hmm. Another little part is when he's testing out the thing and he goes, "I'm going to take it easy. Just going to go 10%." And he goes, like, slams backward into the wall.
Yeah,
that was
funny.
like the funniest thing I had seen all year at that point.
I do like whenever he was testing the prototype and he crashed onto the car and that robot just sprayed fire extinguisher on him.
Oh, brother.
All right. Well, then let's talk about the box office history of this movie.
Let's do. Iron Man debuted May 2nd of 2008. Opening weekend was really good. It debuted to a 3-day total of $98.6 million, which was
almost as good as 98.6 degrees.
It's about the highest non-$100 million weekend there is. Also in the top 5 that weekend, you had Maid of Honor, bringing in 14.7. Baby Mama, bringing in $10 million even. Harold and Kumar, Escape from Guantanamo Bay, was in its second week. Brought in 6.1 mil. And number 5, I have a feeling this is going to be, some of you guys will like this movie, Forgetting Sarah Marshall.
Great movie.
Yeah,
Fantastic
that brought in an even 6 in its third weekend.
Also a movie that Andrew's never seen.
It's all right.
He hasn't?
No, I wasn't kidding.
I said
I wasn't
I gotta go.
Hang on.
Give me.
Bye.
Thank you.
You took his video away.
Oh,
Yeah.
I can't start it back up.
Oh, you can't?
Nope.
No.
Nope. Don't let him back in, damn it. Leave him out there. There are consequences to your actions and he has to learn.
He's out there in the cold.
Be grateful I didn't mute you.
So Iron Man would go on to make $318 million in the United States. It would bring in another $266 million from overseas, bringing its worldwide total to $585.3 million, which is a good haul. A good haul for a quote-unquote untested character, unknown character. If we go to the year 2008,
He's seen Drill Bit Taylor, though. Sorry, I just couldn't let it go.
Drill Bit Taylor, we'll have to look where that finished on the top board. So Iron Man, like we talked about, opening May 2nd, definitively opened the summer movie season that year and finished number 2 for the yearly box office. Definitively ending the summer movie season that year was the number 1 movie, The Dark Knight, which brought in $533 million just domestically, and would worldwide make a very, very hard push to being I think at that time, only the third movie or second movie to ever cross $1 billion, which it would do. And unfortunately, it sits at the very bottom of the now humongous $1 billion club.
I do want to point something out about this. I want to say this year, 2008, was probably the start of like the mega blockbusters.
It was.
Like the $1 billion blockbusters, because it's just like what you said just a second ago. I think this is the third now that I think about it, because it goes, at the time, it was Titanic. I think Pirates of the Caribbean, Dead Man's Chest.
Yeah, I think that was the other one.
And I remember that The Dark Knight, whenever it completed the summer, didn't cross the $1 billion. It didn't cross the $1 billion mark yet. It wasn't until the next year when they re-released it.
Yep.
And it finally did, and it just barely inched over it.
Yep.
But like,
that's exactly right. 2008 was sort of a banner year, because I think the successes of Iron Man and The Dark Knight really determined how the two comic book movies themselves how they would handle their futures.
Yeah.
Where you have like DC, almost every movie's trying to emulate that sort of dark grittiness that you see with The Dark Knight, whereas the Marvel movies, they continue to sort of embrace a more lighthearted, naturalistic feel with their films. And that kind of carried through to how I think a lot of the other movie franchises out there would handle their stuff. If you look at the other movies that came out that year, at number 3, you had Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull bringing in $317 million. Number 4, you have Hancock bringing in $227. And at number 5, you have Pixar's Wall-E bringing in $223.
Is 2020 going to be the first year without $1 billion movie in how many years?
Yeah, probably in quite a while. Since at least 2015, I think. No, there was $1 billion movie in 2015. I'll have to look it up. But Kung Fu Panda, sorry, what I meant to say was some other movies that came out that year: Kung Fu Panda, Twilight, Quantum of Solace. We'll get to you one day. Let me see here. Oh, Sex and the City. There's a movie everybody loves. Mamma Mia.
Here we go again.
Marley and Me. Slumdog Millionaire was, I believe, the best picture winner that year, wasn't it?
Yep.
So there you go. The other Marvel movie came out that year, The Incredible Hulk, finished at number 17. So
Drill Bit Taylor.
Oh yeah, I gotta find Drill Bit. Where is he at? So there's Tropic Thunder at number 23. Here's a movie I guarantee you Andrew's seen, Valkyrie. That was one with Tom Cruise.
He's not.
Saw 5. There was a Rambo movie in 2008. I forgot.
Saw 5 made more money than Drill Bit Taylor.
Yeah,
Andrew,
so
I just
far.
need you to understand all this.
So far. Oh, here it is in the number 86 spot. Drill Bit Taylor
86.
brought in $32.8 million.
You can go see Iron Man though.
Well, in its defense, Drill Bit Taylor technically made more than the movie Milk with Sean Penn, so good for it.
Milk was an indie film, though.
Yeah, it's true.
Oscar nominated.
I'll take that away. Anyway, so
Drill Bit Taylor is the why am I even no? It's a movie starring Josh Peck.
Owen Wilson was in it.
Yeah, but let's not. Yeah,
Josh Peck is better than Owen Wilson.
Owen Wilson is
Josh Peck is better than Owen Wilson. But what movie have you ever heard of Josh Peck in other than my one of my favorite movies ever, Max Keeble's Big Move?
He was in Snow Day.
Max Keeble's Big Move, Snow Day, and Drill Bit Taylor.
And arguably, Max Keeble's Big Move and Snow Day are actually just, the same movie, but Max Keeble didn't show up for one of them.
Yeah, and it snows in one of them.
So, that's it for the box office. That's that week. I mean,
why are you so creepy close to your camera too, bro? You get all sensual.
It's a very high-grossing movie. Do you guys want to know where it stands on the MCU as a total?
Yeah.
Like where it ranks against all the other ones? Let's look here.
Oh no, leave that as a tiebreaker, and if we don't need it, then we'll.
Oh, good. That's a good idea.
We'll go through it.
That's a good idea. Okay, so we'll move on now to the Letterboxd game. I believe I won the game last week, so I'll run through this real quick for you guys. If you're new to the show, Letterboxd game is where we go to letterboxd.com, where people, regular everyday fans, get to rate movies, and we challenge each other to guess what the aggregate score is amongst all the fans on the Letterboxd community. So, with that in mind, what are your guesses for the movie Iron Man? I accidentally almost read my ranking, my personal ranking, as the ranking for the movie. Go ahead. Who wants to go first?
I will.
Go ahead, Andrew.
I'm going to go with 3.9.
3.9 from Andrew.
I don't think I can overcome my bias enough to make it less than 4. So 4.2.
4.2.
I don't think it's that high, but I don't think I can make myself go any lower.
Josh.
3.8.
3.8 from Josh. All right, your winner this week. No tiebreaker will be necessary because your winner this week is Josh with a score of 3.7 is the actual score. Now, I guess you can actually get down to the nitty-gritty here. The weighted average is actually 3.73. So
3.73.
Josh is only off by like a small fraction of decimals. Yeah. What do we think about that? 3.7. Does that sound good to you guys?
I'm happy with it.
Yeah, that's fine.
I don't think I'm quite in love with it, but it's fine.
I thought it would be higher, but I'm okay with it.
I thought it would be higher too. I'm looking at some of the people who follow me and who I follow that have ranked it, and they all rank it very much lower than I would thought.
I would think it'd be a solid 4.0.
Is that your ranking officially, Andrew?
Yeah. Because it stands the test of time. It's 13 years or no 12 years old, and it's still entertaining. It's still an entertaining flick.
I will also give it a 4. I think even 4. I think the only things that really hold it back for me are like we talked about with some of the villain issues. But otherwise, there's nothing to hate about this movie. It's great.
It's a 4 from me as well.
I'm gonna up it by a 0.5. Go with 4.5. Because I was watching it and I always thought the same thing about the villain. But the villain in this story makes sense. He may not be the strongest, but it makes sense. I mean,
well, of course it makes sense, but it's executed poorly, is what
it's not. I wouldn't say it's executed poorly. I would just say that it's not it's just a generic thing. I wouldn't say it's executed poorly because there is a connection between those two.
I would say
it feels, and Jeff Bridges does a good job.
Yeah.
It's just not flashy.
Yeah, I would say it's executed exactly how it was made to be, but I think that they could have done a little bit more to make it a bigger show. I don't know, because Iron Man himself, Tony Stark, is so grandiose that like the villain by comparison seems so low key that he's, and I don't mean the joke there, but he seems so sort of steady even that it doesn't quite work as well. It feels like he needed somebody to match him. But otherwise, yeah, I mean, what is there to dislike? So what does that bring our average to? Something like 4.2?
4.1.
4.1. That's not a bad score. Little better than the Letterboxd average.
Where does this rank on the Marvel list of moneymakers?
Oh, it is so unadjusted for inflation, it sits at the number 13 spot.
Yeah.
Which, when you think about the fact that they've had 24 movies at this point, to still be in the middle, like in the top, towards the upper, towards, I don't know how to say this best, but
upper echelon,
upper part, yeah, it's in the upper half. Well, not really. I guess it would have to be 12 to be in the upper half, but you know what I mean. Like, right, like it sits at 318 million worldwide. Like the movies that are ahead of it, Guardians of the Galaxy, Spider-Man. I'm not really able to adjust for inflation anymore on these box office mojo charts. I'll try to look into that next week for Iron Man 2. But anyway, that's about all we have, I think.
Yep, that's it. We'll be back next week with Iron Man 2.
Real.
Yikes.
Mickey Rourke, his big comeback. He tried to be Robert Downey Jr. for a hot second. It didn't work.
Do not like Mickey Rourke. Do not like him.
That's Sam Rockwell.
No, I like Sam Rockwell.
He was so underutilized.
I'll tell you what, if John Goodman was playing the bad guy, we'd be all about it.
If John Goodman. You're not wrong.
The problem, well, this is just a drop tease, but like the problem is that Sam Rockwell could have been a good bad guy had they let him.
Yep.
They didn't. They let Mickey Rourke do it.
Yep.
They didn't give you much with Rockwell, and they didn't give me enough anyway.
Yeah, I mean the best thing to me about Iron Man 2 is the introduction of Black Widow.
Oh yes, and
but we'll talk about that.
Talk all about that next week.
That's a good teaser. Okay, find us online at Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Also on Letterboxd. Just search So Many Sequels on all those. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and subscribe to our podcast. Subscribe to both of them.
Yep.
You don't have to listen to both.
Follow us everywhere.
Subscribe to both.
We're having a lot of fun on Facebook too these days. So
a lot of fun on Facebook. A lot of good memes and stuff.
Yeah, a lot of what do you one has to go.
Johnny Depp.
Yeah, Leonardo DiCaprio. Yeah.
Did you see that, David? We posted that while you were gone. You agree, right?
Literally nobody said Leonardo DiCaprio, but that's who I'd pick.
You'd pick Leo.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't comment as me. I kept making me comment as So Many Sequels, and I was like, I want to comment as David.
I wish I could figure out why people keep defending Johnny Depp, but I got nothing.
He's cute.
The thing is, when you look at their bodies of work, the biggest loss for me personally with Leo would be Inception. And I'm kind of okay to lose Inception if it means I get to keep all of Tom Cruise's, all of Depp, and all of Tom Hanks. Was it Tom Hanks?
Yeah. But what if Depp do you really want to keep?
The Pirates movies.
He loves the pirate movies.
I love Pirates of the Caribbean movies, man.
Away.
Those are good. Those are good. And
the first one's good.
You know, the funny thing is, I would lose the other movie that I like because it's Johnny Depp and Leonardo DiCaprio, and that's What's Eating Gilbert Grape.
No, What's Eating Gilbert Grape. You keep one. The other person's just recast. I made that argument whenever I was talking about. Yeah, you're gonna keep Gilbert Grape because you just recast Johnny Depp.
Yeah. Well, in that scenario, why don't we just recast everything?
Okay, if we're recasting Depp, I'm good with that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. You have to find somebody for some of these movies, but. I was trying to think of the other one. I don't remember. I can't remember the last time I saw Edward Scissorhands. Anyway, go check out Facebook and have more engaging discussions like this one.
Yes, agreed. Okay. Yep, that's it. Okay, we'll be back next time. Like and subscribe.